On September 10, 2025, the war in Ukraine spilled over in a way that, well, everyone had been dreading. We're talking about a direct incursion into a NATO country's airspace. This didn't just set off alarms, it really put the world's most powerful military alliance to the test. I mean, listen to that. That's not just some political soundbite. This stark warning from Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk came right after his country's sovereignty, a NATO country's sovereignty, was breached, and not just for a moment, but in a really direct and sustained way.
So to really get the weight of that statement, we need to break down exactly what happened that night. Because this was no accident. This was a multi-hour provocation that pushed Europe right to the edge.
Look, this wasn't a single drone that got lost. We're talking about a large-scale swarm launched from Belarus that was deliberately flying in Polish airspace for more than 7 hours. It was a sustained test, clearly designed to see how Poland, and by extension NATO, would react.
The response? It was swift. Polish and Allied jets scrambled and shot down 19 of those drones. Now, this is a pretty historic moment, and not in a good way. It's the first known time a NATO member has actually fired on Russian military assets during this whole conflict. And the damage was done, not just to a house in a small village, but to the entire sense of security on NATO's eastern front.
So, what did Poland do next? They didn't hesitate for a second. They invoked Article 4. And this move set off a whole chain of critical diplomatic and military conversations. Understanding the difference between the step Poland took and the one it didn't is absolutely key to understanding the stakes here.
Okay, so this gets us right to the heart of the NATO playbook. Invoking Article 4 is a big deal. We've only seen it happen a handful of times in NATO history, and it is fundamentally different from the one everyone talks about, Article 5.
So here's the best way to think about it. Article 4 is like pulling the fire alarm. It gets every single ally around the table immediately for urgent talks to figure out, okay, what do we do? Article 5, on the other hand, that's the fire department breaking down the door. That's the all for one, one for all collective defense clause, and it's only been used once ever.
And this is the razor-thin line that NATO is walking. This drone swarm was absolutely a serious provocation, a deliberate push to test the boundaries. But was it an armed attack in the sense that would trigger Article 5? Probably not. And navigating that distinction is how you avoid an all-out war.
You know, this incident didn't just happen in a vacuum, and it definitely didn't catch Poland off guard. For years now, the country has been methodically turning itself into one of Europe's biggest military powers.
Poland is now spending over 4% of its entire GDP on defense. To put that in perspective for you, that's the highest of any country in the whole NATO alliance. It's literally double the official 2% target that many countries still struggle to meet.
And all that spending is about to get a massive shot in the arm. Just before this happened, Brussels gave the green light for nearly 44 billion euros from the EU's defense fund, all of it specifically for Poland's military, for everything from air defense to cyber.
Yeah, this isn't just about spending money. It's about a very clear strategic vision. Poland is in the middle of one of the most aggressive rearmament plans in Europe, and the goal is to build a military that can not only defend its own borders, but basically act as the new anchor for all of NATO's eastern flank.
And the shopping list is just staggering. We're talking almost 1,000 new main battle tanks from South Korea on top of hundreds of American Abrams. They're adding F-35s, Apache helicopters, hundreds of HIMARS rocket systems. Poland isn't just rearming, it's building a fortress.
So, an event like this, over one night, it sends shockwaves way beyond Poland's borders. This is one of those moments that forces every major capital, from Kyiv to Washington, to kind of recalibrate their entire strategy.
For Ukraine, this basically proves what they've been saying all along. This war cannot be contained. For NATO, it's a huge test of credibility and deterrence. And for the United States, it becomes this incredibly delicate balancing act. How do you reassure your allies and show strength without accidentally stumbling into a direct conflict with Russia?
And this brings us to the last and maybe the most unsettling part of this whole story. The line between a provocation and a much wider war is getting dangerously, uncomfortably thin.
See, this drone incursion didn't happen in a void. It happened as Russia and Belarus are gearing up for their massive joint military exercises, Zapad 2025, right there on Poland's border. And these drills are set to include, believe it or not, simulations of nuclear scenarios.
So the immediate fear isn't really panic. The fear is a a miscalculation, a single stray missile that hits the wrong target, or a drone that isn't shot down and causes mass casualties. That could be all it takes to push a NATO response from an Article 4 consultation into an Article 5 conflict.
And that's the tightrope the world is walking today. That's the central question hanging over everything. How does an alliance deter this kind of aggression without accidentally stumbling into a much, much wider war? It's a question triggered by just 19 drones that crossed a line in the sky.